I'll just wait a couple minutes for the rest of the attendees to join and then we'll jump right in.
I think we're pretty close, Dee, actually. We might as well kick it off, yeah.
Okay, well, thank you everyone for joining us today. We've been very excited about this webinar. Today we're speaking with Sharon Bowman, CIO of Hornsby Shire Council, about the Council's 2020 transformation from virtual desktop to end-user compute with Microsoft Surface. Hosting today is Brett Gilbertson, our ASI Digital Skills Coach. And Brett, I'll hand it over to you.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks, Dee, and thanks for joining us. Thanks for Sharon for being there with us. It's really good to have you with us. And I think, Sharon, we've got to know each other over the last 3 or 4 years that we've been with ASI, and it's been a real privilege working with you and the council. So we have a few questions today that we're going to cover in talking about this topic. I've got the slide up there. I won't read them all out to you, but we're going to have a fairly broad conversation based on what you've done and some of the insights that we've gained over the last few years. But I actually might just stop sharing this presentation now and just kick it off with that question, Sharon, as to what it was that prompted the idea to go from thin clients, I think, that you had in the past in your office there, over to Surface devices.
Yeah, sure. So, thanks for having me today. It's always great to talk about some of the things that we've been doing that we think have really added a lot of value to council. And in this particular instance, so I've been at council for 5.5 years now, and when I joined council, if you've done your maths correctly, I joined in January 2020, which was just in time for just fun times, just in time for COVID. So at the time we had a virtual desktop infrastructure set up. Everybody had thin client devices on their desktop. And when, of course, that was something that was completely new to me. I don't really like the idea of people being chained to their desk. And what we found was that people would go into meetings and they would take, a stack of paperwork with them, anything that they might need to refer to during the meeting. They'd have their little notebook that they'd carry around with them and make notes that then, if you've ever worked like that, you know that going back and finding those notes later can be almost impossible.
Because we all take the notes back to the desk, don't we, and retype them after the meeting.
Yeah, exactly. So that they're there for posterity. So so the whole thing was really antiquated to me. So I already had the idea sort of churning around how we could improve things, but we were quite committed at that time to a long rollout on a lease of that equipment that I think had only been in place for a year or two at that point in time. But then, of course, COVID hit, and that sort of forced everybody's hand a little bit. We had to get everybody working from home and mobilise that really rapidly as everybody went through. On the one hand, the virtual desktop infrastructure really helped because it meant that people could log in from any device. So if they had a spare computer at home, that was great. They could log in and still work. Of course, what everybody found during COVID was that they didn't have a computer per family member at home, and they had to juggle the
there was
computer
a lot of
with
competition for that
the kids
one
trying to work from home. Exactly. And so we did have, an issue where we needed to try and find some devices really quickly for people to be able to work from home when that happened. And then people got used to this, working from home, bit more flexibility, and the Teams meetings became the new way of working. And so when we came back into the office, everything started to change, and there was a lot more demand for that more flexible working that wasn't quite being provided by the virtual desktop solutions. And so we then started looking at, well, what's the business case for moving to a suite of laptops? And when we originally started looking at it, it was certainly more of a longer term plan that we were going to transition over a number of years and be ready to completely decommission the virtual desktop stack or the device, the actual virtual desktops, as well as the infrastructure that was in our data center. And we were also doing a complete cloud transition at the time as well.
That whole infrastructure there obviously is pretty expensive, isn't it, to maintain and to license?
It actually was. Yeah, the business case actually, I was very surprised. I thought that, in deciding to set up a virtual desktop infrastructure, both the thin clients are much cheaper, but the actual server infrastructure that's required to actually facilitate that is very expensive. And what we were finding was that it was really unreliable. We had a number of situations in the year before I started where basically everybody hated our IT team because they would come in the morning and find that they couldn't get on to the system, and it would take them sort of a couple of hours to actually get up and operational for the day, which is really not a fantastic user experience. So the reliability wasn't there. It was very expensive. It was very easy for us to make the business case, but not necessarily to throw out this, very significant investment that had been made. But what we found as we started to transition the user groups that we thought could get the best benefit from having a portable solution, so a Surface device of some sort, was that created demand that then everybody wanted to do it, and so people were finding bits and pieces of spare budget to say, do my team now. So we were actually fully across to a full fleet of Surface devices before the end of our virtual desktop. The lease that we had on those, we had them well ready to return before the lease had actually ended. So
yeah, fair enough. Yeah. And I mean, before we jump into that sort of discussion about planning there, Sharon, I know from working with councils from, probably 15 plus years, obviously the field workers tend to get left out, the people in the depots and those sorts of things, to these sorts of decisions. But going to a mobile device like Surface, no doubt enables those people. And
absolutely. And that was actually one of the user groups, because they were not all computer based, obviously. There are a lot of people that are out in the field all the time, and they would be the ones that come back after the meeting and type up their notes, but they would come back after they'd been in the field and give their paperwork to somebody to type up. And so getting all of those field-based people out in the field working on their devices, doing things once, it was a really great way of us getting a bit more efficiency into those teams. And so they certainly were a target group. Obviously, people who spent a lot of time in meetings and people who spent a lot of time in the field were the ones who benefited the most from having those devices. And then, of course, in a post-COVID world where people were doing a lot of flexible work from home, it made more sense to us for people to have one device that they were carrying with them wherever they were, rather than supporting a virtual desktop infrastructure to facilitate that.
That tends to go hand in hand with that cloud first shift as well. I mean, that sort of time frame, 2020, a lot of people were still in that transition, moving to Microsoft 365 and tools like that. That also benefited you with this sort of decision, no doubt, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And we definitely were doing that cloud first transition. And just for our sins, we didn't just have COVID, we also found asbestos in our main admin building, and had to move out in between the two COVID lockdowns. And so, we had lots of things that were really disrupting our normal way of working. And the move to the laptops both facilitated that and was precipitated by all of those things happening. And so, when we're back into our main admin building now with completely new ways of working. So, if somebody had gone off 5.5 years ago and come back today, they would come back to, a very completely different environment that was nothing like the one that we had pre-COVID. So
I'm sure that's relatable for a lot of people, how much the workplace and what we're doing has changed, but also those physical spaces. That's really interesting. So tell us a little bit about that, you've already sort of indicated that there were a lot of unexpected events that changed how you planned for this. But
Yeah.
how did you go about planning it? What sort of things did you do?
Yeah, so I mean, originally when we sort of made the case, we thought we would wait until we got to a point in time where it made sense to do that transition financially and also, you know, at a point in time, but we ended up accelerating the transition quite a bit just because of the amount of demand that we were getting from the workforce. And then that was supported by our executive team saying that they could see how the people who already had the devices had become more efficient and effective. And so they were happy to provide the funding to get that that process sort of accelerated along the way. So, you know, I think one of the things I've really learned in IT is that you make a plan, but you also have to be very flexible and very adaptable. And yeah, we definitely adapted on that one.
That's really interesting. And I note here in my notes, you told us about a demo space that you set up for people to come and see the devices and figure out what they needed.
Yes, because we were sort of offering people the choice of did they want a laptop, and that's, you know, it's a more familiar piece of equipment. People know what they're getting with a laptop. And I'll admit, I was actually originally in the camp that I thought, oh, I actually spend a lot of time working on a laptop, literally on my lap. Yeah. You know, sometimes I'll sit at home at night watching TV and I'll have the computer laptop on my lap. Yeah. And I had a 2-in-1 once before, and I found it really didn't facilitate that. And then once we got a few devices in and sort of started trialing them and giving them to people to try, and I went, oh, actually, I can work with that. So I think at the less familiar device, getting a bit of a touch and a feel and how does it work, and you know, with the Surface Pro devices, they are a different form factor, and the keyboard is different. And if you remember the original Surface Pro devices, they weren't great, but now the keyboards are really good and they're stable, and you can put it on your lap, and the keyboard experience of typing on it is very similar to a laptop experience. And so letting people touch and feel that, but then also to see how easy it is to remove the keyboard and to use it as a tablet device.
I don't know if you've seen this, Sharon. I don't know if you have these yet, but I've got the new Surface keyboard that detaches and you can still use it, and that's kind of completely changed the game with this device. But that's
absolutely that would be. I'm looking forward to getting one of those actually.
Yeah. And so that sort of leads us into, I mean, the part where I met you and that we played a little bit, and we'll talk a little bit more about what ASI did, just to put the plug in for us, right? But putting people at the centre was something that we'd noted there. And our approach together to that. Do you want to talk a little bit about that and what you found?
Absolutely. So I think, and I'm going to steal your thunder, Brett, because one of the first things that we talked about when we met with you was that you were telling us about the fact that, you know, really nobody's been training people on how to use computers and the basic, you know, the actual computer and the Microsoft suite. Nobody's really been getting trained since about 2000. That budget disappeared and has gone into training other things, I guess. And so really we're all just using things the best way we can figure out. I think the theory was everything was supposed to be intuitive and you could just figure it out and you'd learn by osmosis or whatever. And what we discovered when we started talking to you, and we started with a session just with with our technology and transformation team, was that even people who work in technology had lots to learn about the capabilities that are just baked in to all the devices and Windows and the Microsoft tools that we just don't know about or weren't using as effectively as we could be. And so having learned that, you know, there's things that everybody, even the most tech savvy amongst us, can still learn, we realize that if we're giving these tools to people, it's like saying to somebody off the street, here's a drill, go and be a carpenter, or here's a hammer, go and be a carpenter.
You'll figure it out.
Without giving them any training on how to actually use those tools to do it the most effectively. So We can either sit with every person individually and say, let us show you how to do this, or we can roll out some training. So we originally did some on-premise in face-to-face sessions that the team, Brett and the team came and ran, and just those taster 2-hour sessions that we ran with a big proportion of the workforce, everybody came away saying, oh my gosh, I learned so much. And even if I remember only 1 or 2 of those things, it's going to have been worthwhile. And so more recently, because of that demand, we've taken on the digital skills coaching program, which we've just sort of launching into now. And again, people are coming along to those sessions and saying, even though we let people have the touch and feel of both of the devices, and there's been a reasonable proportion of people in the organisation that have had the Surface Pros, but it's when people are coming along to those that digital skills coaching that they're going, oh, can I swap from a laptop to a Pro? Because again, it's opening your eyes to what the possibilities are with the Pros and the ink. Pen, ink to text, and a whole lot of the capabilities that you can get using it in tablet mode that are make it a superior option to a standard laptop that people really only see once they're getting that training to see what they can do with it.
And you mentioned it already, but even from an IT perspective, like the support team there probably came in a bit skeptical.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
I know what I'm doing. And as we do in IT, right? And they came out some of the most enthusiastic advocates for improving skills across the board. And I guess that helps them to change from a technology-centered view of the world to a people-centered view as well, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And the bottom line is that what all we do, we can provide the tools, but giving people the training on how to use the tools is really where the sweet spot is from getting the benefits from anything that we're giving. And I think we've learned a lot about that in a lot of our other transformation projects that we're running as well, that really making sure that we're getting that training delivery piece right is the key to anything that we do. So and I think we've long done it for application type software, line of business software, but we forget to do it for the more basic stuff. And definitely that's
there's lots of benefits to be gained there, isn't there?
Yeah, definitely.
So the consideration for Surface as a range of devices, what was that for you and the council?
Yeah, so we had trialled a couple of other sort of end user compute devices. Reliability was a big thing. We'd had a couple of I won't name. We trialled other brands, and we were just everything that we looked at, we were having reliability issues with. Even just in the first couple of months of trial situations, I had a 2-in-1 laptop device that I trialed from another brand that I think within about 2 weeks, the battery life was about 3 hours. And so if I was in a long meeting, it would die halfway through the meeting. And the support that we were getting in trying to resolve that issue, is there something that I'm doing? What am I putting too much? I like to have all the tabs open and everything. Am I putting too much demand on it? But I think it just hadn't been the actual device hadn't been geared up to handle being on long Teams calls, for example. So if you're in a meeting and you're trying to join that meeting in a meeting room, you don't want to have 12 power cords sitting around for everybody to plug in to actually use the technology. So having devices that have been designed to do that has been really powerful. Really low support needs from an actual device point of view for our help desk. They get very, very limited number of calls that something's actually broken in the device itself. Usually it's something that a reconfiguration will fix. And so what we do is we always have a couple of spares. If somebody's got a problem that they can't fix easily with a little bit of troubleshooting, they'll just say, come down and pick up a new device. It'll take half an hour to going through Intune to set that new device up for somebody, and then we can have the old device and either just reformat it and see if that fixes it, or put it, whatever needs to be done to put it back in the pool. But it's normally some sort of a config issue rather than an actual hardware issue that's causing those problems.
And just to call out the ASI part to this, obviously we've been involved with device procurement with the council and supplying devices, as we do with many government departments and councils all over Australia. But with that digital skills uplift that we talked about, we were able to fund that through Microsoft support with Surface as well, which is a unique thing that they do. But is there anything else that Kirsty and the team at ASI helped you with?
ASI helped out with that Intune rollout as well, initially when we were getting all of that set up. So that was really helpful. We now have internal skills in that area, but obviously when we started on the journey, we really didn't. We were coming off the old-fashioned SCCM way of configuring devices, and so getting that initial assistance to get that across the line. Some of our more legacy type systems have been a bit more problematic to get that single touch deployment that we really want to get to. We're not quite there yet, but we're still
come a long way though.
working towards that. And it's very I think the last time I had to get a new device, because I managed to break the config reasonably often. I'm pretty hard on my devices. So the last time I got an update, a new machine, I think I only had to log in once and leave it for about half an hour, and then it was ready to go. So that we're nearly there.
That sounds like it's come a long way for sure. That sounds pretty good. Yeah. And just thinking about the security aspect that we talked about as well. Back in the beginning when you went to working from home, having to sort of trust everybody's home computers and all that sort of stuff.
I think, yes, the guys were assuring me that, if they're using the virtual desktop plug-in to their computer, if they do have a virus on their computer, it won't breach the barrier. But I was always a little bit skeptical about that, and I was never comfortable with the idea of people using all of these different home devices that we had no control over to access corporate systems. And so for me, I think one of the big wins for going to a completely controlled device fleet is that security check of going, we know exactly every device that people are using, their
nobody's watching you log in, got a key logger going in the background, all that sort of stuff, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And also just on that, the simplicity was the other aspect to that question. But did you achieve the flexibility that you wanted, and what's the sort of the feedback, I guess, is the next question, from your people out there?
Yeah, look, we absolutely we're quite a ways down the track now for having the full device fleet out there, and I think definitely security has been a big tick. The simplicity, as I said, the whole process now of issuing a new device to somebody when we have a new starter or we have a device that needs to be replaced for any reason is really simple. But then just in terms of, what are we getting the most out of the devices that people are actually using? While I think we've still got room to go, I think everybody would say that they're much more effective than they were prior to this. Going back to some of the things that I noticed right back when I started on day one, no longer do people carry a stack of paper into a meeting room. Everybody has a device. So if they need to reference a document, they can do it right there while they're sitting in the room. Occasionally, we still have a few people that like to take notes, and we're trying to train them. And part of the digital skills will be doing a refresher on the OneNote inking. And so the people who haven't quite caught on to that as being a much more effective way of taking notes, they will get there. because as I said, most people, they'll walk into a meeting room with their computer, but then they'll also have a piece of paper. And I think, why are we doing this? So there's just a bit more training required for those. We've got a lot of those field-based staff, and it's particularly a lot of people in our planning and compliance area that do a lot of inspections, and they now take the Surface Pro devices out and do those inspections directly into the device, where they can make their notes, they can take photos. It all just gets connected and collected at time. And so rather than having to take paper notes and then come back at the end of the day and type everything up and connect the photos that they've taken and all of that sort of thing, it's all just there ready to go. They don't have that administrative piece to do at the end of the day. Gotcha. So there's been some really good use cases. It's probably we would have a small number of people that sit at a desk for 7-8 hours a day, and very limited number of meetings. They're not in the field. But for them, the win for me is that then when they take that device home on their work from home days, I'm still happy that they're
going to be secure. Yeah,
they're still secure. Yeah,
that's great. So I guess the final sort of questions, we're getting down to the end, Sharon, but what insights do you have, and what would you do differently if you went back to 2020 and started this again?
I think when you asked me this last time, I was only half flippant when I said I'd just do it quicker. I think that we tried to hang on to what's that saying? You throw good money after bad. I feel like we did that in trying to limp along,
cost fallacy.
Because there'd been such a big investment in that equipment that nobody was quite willing to just let that go. Whereas I think in retrospect, we should have just let that go and moved on so that we could start reaping those benefits more quickly. Really, everything else has gone so it's very smoothly, and there's not much else I would change about the process.
Well, it's been really fun working with you on this journey over the last few years, but what's next, Sharon? What's the future for the council and for yourself?
Okay, so, well, for me personally, I'm actually leaving on Friday. So I'm going to Inner West Council as the Director of Corporate. So that'll be a whole new journey for me, and I'm sure we'll be in touch to see what we can do there. And I'm hoping they've got a Surface device for me when I start on Monday week.
We prepped Darren on that.
But, For Hornsby Council, I think, we're, as I said, we're just embarking on that digital skills coaching journey. I think we're nearly 3 months into an initial 1-year subscription. So I will follow with interest to see what happens out of the rollout there. I think there's a whole lot of benefits in terms of, I think it will reduce over time, reduce the demand on our help desk, where they'll be able to, when they get the questions about how do I do this, that, or the other, they'll be able to point people to the training module that they may or may not have done. It might be that somebody's asking a question about something that they didn't go when the training was available, or it might be that they went and subsequently forgot, because we never remember everything we see. So I think that training load, I think just the increase in the digital literacy across the organisation will really assist. We've got a big program of work in terms of the transformation that we're doing across the organisation. And I think the more we've got a good baseline of digital skills, that transformation effort becomes easier, and that change effort becomes easier. So I'm really looking forward to that. And as I said, I think that over time, at the proportion of our device fleet between laptops and pros will continue to shift more and more to people having the pros, because the more people learn about what the capabilities are, the more they want one. So
it's a rich multimodal device.
Yeah.
Well, that has been fantastic, Sharon. I will just get Dee maybe to chip in here and just check in with any Q&A questions that we want to answer. We're at the end of our time, so thank you for joining, everybody. But Dee, was there anything top of mind in the Q&A at all?
There was no Q&A from the attendees, but I wanted to ask Sharon, have you seen more people work from home now and have more of a flexible working arrangement after adopting the change?
Yeah, so our council approach to flexibility is that we have a 60-40 split. So everyone's sort of
Amazing.
expected to be in the office 3 days a week. I think everybody would like to have more work from home. But you know, the technology is certainly there to support work from home these days. Our Teams meetings. We've got all of our meeting rooms kitted out with really good Teams meeting equipment. So meetings can be hybrid, people can be remote. But I think it's that, we always have to balance that personal touch and what you can get from physically being in the office with people and those casual conversations and that sort of thing. So I think a lot of councils seem to have settled on the 60-40, and certainly that's where we are. But definitely our equipment has facilitated that. And I think if we didn't have the equipment in place, there would be more of a push to get people in the office more of the time.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you, Sharon.
All right, well, it is time. So thanks everybody for joining. It's been nice to have you all here, and Sharon especially for sharing your insights before you finish up at Hornsby. But it's been great working with you for the last few years. So yeah, appreciate everybody joining today. Thank you.
Thanks very much. Cheers, everyone.